So while I'm waiting for my phone to other phone, my note phone to wake up. Actually, it's my note phone and the phone that I can refer to the Wikipedia article on various movies that I'm watching. I figured I'd just do a little meta video talking about, hey, I'm watching a whole ton of movies. For me, I'm watching a whole ton of movies. I'm averaging, especially at the moment because Ja is away, about a movie a day. I think that was probably a little bit more widely spaced out when with Ja not here because I'm not playing movies at lunchtime while she's about. I actually get to interact with her. But I've been going through this whole kick lately, watching a whole bunch of TCM movies. Turner Classic Movies is the channel that I asked to have added to our cable package because um I don't watch a lot of TV. Probably not. I mean, I'm a hip. Well, I'm not a hip young zillennial or anything like that. I am most definitely a Generation X, but I spend a lot of time online. I watch a lot of YouTube. I do a lot of reading. So movies sort of fall by the wayside. But what I've been doing lately is watching older movies on the Turner Classic Movies, which movie channel, which runs uninterrupted by commercials, movies primarily I think from like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, with some in the 70s, some in the 80s. Actually, Phantom Thread was on. But those are the anomalies when you get something like Phantom Thread, which is actually I think of this century. Good lord. But I've been going through and watching a lot of old movies. I started off on a Gene Arthur kick. They had this thing during the summer TCM where it was Summer of the Stars, where they would play a whole bunch of movies focusing on one actor or actress. And so I started off by watching Gene Arthur movies that I hadn't gone to. I had already watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I had already watched The American Senator. There's a variety of Gene Arthur movies I had already watched, probably her best known ones. And so then I went like, oh, okay, I enjoyed doing that. I talked about each of those movies. I just got into this kick of like, oh well, let's record my reaction to them as I go along, just as an exercise and maybe learn how to talk co- a little bit more coherently on movies. I don't know if that's gone how well I'm doing on that. I cinematography, music, they're all closed books to me. But yeah, I did Jean Arthur, and then I got onto this whole Constance Bennett thing where I really enjoyed her 30s pre-code movies where she's sort of the wild, sardonic starlet in these movies, looking fabulous in gowns, but also just really kind of a cool character, someone you just want to hang out with. That I watched a couple of Marilyn Monroe movies, which actually, as always, it's like, oh, Marilyn Monroe, she's damn good at what she did. She's a really good actress, really good comedic actress, and sort of weaponized her beauty. So that was really awesome. And in this last thing here, it's sort of a co thing. It's supposed to be focusing on Myrna Loy, but I think all of the movies that I happened to catch were Myrna Loy and William Powell movies, and that's who I'm in at the moment. I'm really enjoying both stars, both actors. They're both really good at what they did. You can see why they really get on well together, which is probably no news to anyone. I haven't, I'm watching all of the non-Thin Man movies. I didn't, for some reason, I didn't pick up the Thin Man movies as I went, where they play Nick and Nora Charles. So I will have to try those next, or not next, but when they come around again, I will have to do that. I think I've got a whole bunch of Humphrey Bogart movies coming up. Again, lesser known Humphrey Bogart movies, but I'm really enjoying just sort of sinking into this time in Hollywood. There's the racism, the unexamined racism in the movies, but there's also kind of a efficiency of it's a really notable change of how female characters are actually a lot more active or have been a lot more active and a lot more allowed to be a little bit more wild in the 30s movies, and then in the 40s, and then especially you get into the 50s, some of the 50s movies I've watched where it's like, oh, things have tightened up. We get into heavy westerns, which seems to be a very much of a coding for manly, when men were men and women were women kind of movies, which definitely kind of matches the conservatism of the time, and makes me think about superhero movies today, where you have a very male-dominated genre in itself. So it's an interesting way of going. Oh, interesting to look at this in the context of our culture now, and which isn't to say that, like, there aren't some very strong female characters in modern superhero movies. I don't think they would get away with that, but it's interesting. You get some kind of reactions from fans not liking that, and you think, you would like cowboys. You would like cowboy movies where men were men and women were women and knew their place. It's like, and all, the any people of color also knew their place. It's like, oh, okay. It's even if something's not is acceptable to do openly, it's interesting how it's you can see it more clearly and openly presented in older forms of mass media of the time. And there's a lot of these movies, they're not great art. They're really fun commercial movies. And some of the subject matter, I think, has just moved on to TV because you just don't do this in movies anymore. It's not a viable concern. But yeah. So I'm really enjoying that. I thought I'd just do a little meta video on my TCM project. I guess that's what I'll call the video, my TCM project, because it's very much watching a whole ton of Turner Classic Movies presentations of old Hollywood. All right. I've been Jay. More videos later.